Look, I listened to the last now, the recording just before this now. I got to about 4 minutes and a few seconds, and I remembered she said to me, "You're very pious." And I've always taken pious to be a negative word, unfeeling and cold. And so I don't mean I recoiled at this, I just noted that's the word she's using. I don't use the word, it's not in my dictionary, if you like, it's not my use of words. And I looked it up just before doing these recordings this morning, laying here in bed. It's only 6:45 now. And I'm surprised to find that the dictionary definition is not the emotive association that I have with the word. It says deeply religious, very moral. It's not saying it in a negative way. It's become negative because I suppose in my experience, the first 24 years of life, I was not religious by any means, against it, I mean, I thought it was all wrong, and not following God, you see, not accepting such a way of life. So I took the word pious to mean something objectionable. But now she sees me as pious. I don't. Now, is she seeing me as pious in terms of the dictionary understanding? In which case, if you like, it's flattery. It's a good thing anyway. Or is she seeing not pious, in the way that I would have held it as a secular person, as a criticism, a fault? Cold and unloving, aloof, separate, not relating, arrogant, in fact, in a spiritual sense. Well, given she talks about the universe is telling you, rather than, well, it's not an entirely ungodly view, is it? It's a belief in a sort of divine guidance, without wanting to personify it, or perhaps without wanting to belittle it, as thinking of God in terms of personhood as we know persons. Do you see, in some sense, each person's view of God is accepted by God? The Gita says, those that worship me in lesser form, gurus and avatars and so on, lesser gods, I accept as unto me, and dare I say of God, try to respond accordingly, even though they don't know me quite. In loving kindness, I know they're doing the best they can. They're not there yet. Most of all, I love those who just sit certain of me. But I respond to them in their worship, as if it were worship unto me. They've got it wrong, but I understand. They're children. Of course they've got it wrong. Doesn't stop me loving them. But in some sense, the Gita says it's even lovelier when they see me as I am, God unrevealed. Now, I know the worship song I just gave you a couple of recordings back refers to Jesus, which is God revealed, isn't it? Okay, revealed in a story, but revealed. And I can relate to that because it's the best so many of us can do. It's very hard, as the Gita says, Bhagavad Gita, to worship God unrevealed, the unrevealed God, in His fullness that, well, quite honestly, no material presentation can do justice to. He's infinitely wonderful, lovely, beautiful, perfect, glorious, glorious, glorious. He's our dad. And it's almost a heresy to think of him as dad. But the story of Jesus holds firm that we should think of him as such, that this is most acceptable to him and possibly all that we can manage. So, when my friend says, perhaps the universe is trying to tell you by these 3 failures of marriage, Marshall, that you've got something wrong with your understanding of love. Now, this can be a word of God. So I followed it up with a prayer to God. Show me, show me, show me. And he hasn't. Or perhaps he has. What have I got wrong? And am I pious? And is piousness being actually right, not wrong? You see, I am fanatical and other people see me as inflexible. That's astonishing as trained by Socrates. I mean, Socrates was the only man in Athens who was flexible, from the oracle's point of view. He's the wisest man in Athens, and he says, but I'm not dogmatically sure of anything. And then realizes that's what makes him wise. Now, this was something I could grab hold of and accept. So I don't think I'm inflexible, but I'm apparently appearing inflexible. And it's how we appear that people respond to. And of course my 3 wives may be responding to me in that way, that yes, he's a godsend in that he's sure of himself and teaches accordingly. He has the confidence to do so, despite the world not agreeing with him. But at the same time, it's frightening, because it's overpowering. He's not going to budge. He knows or believes, whatever you like to say, that he's right. And we don't find that terribly friendly. It's not flexible. It's not yielding enough to our own faults when we're in his presence. In other words, I want too much that others come to know God. I want too much that they get it right. If you like, what my 2 or 3,000 recordings say. They say that I want others too much to know God in the way that I know God. I'm pushing them too hard, too fast. They're in this world because they're not ready yet. And it's going to take more time than knowing me to arrive at whatever God truly needs them to arrive at in his grace and kindness and love. So he may take 1,000 incarnations or 1,000,000, but knows that it's right. And yes, he may do it at one enlightening Zen flash of enlightenment. You know, I feel that came to me at 24, didn't I? As I told you, on Essex University campus. I had a St. Paul's experience. Not quite as colourful a blinding light, but in spiritual terms. An insight that was staggering to my change from past to future. I wanted God to exist. Wow. What's happened to you, Marshall? So, it didn't tell me through a dream. It told me through not a dream. Now that's a start turn, isn't it? He just told me direct. Marshall, you're still too insistent. Well, you can judge of yourself whether I'm too insistent, too inflexible, or not. And well, let me pause a sec. May I encourage, Lord, those that have ears to hear, and may I equally let go and rely utterly on you for those that don't. So that I don't be a burden to those that don't or those that do. In other words, I think, Lord, may I have the assurance that you're doing just fine in bringing them to a love of you. I don't have to press. Just be willing, ever ready and willing. Just loving as you love, Lord. Love you, Dad.